my body is a rented tuxedo. I'm sure you've been to some weddings. At my age, I've been to a lot of weddings. We're going to my nephew's wedding coming up this Saturday. And I've never seen as drunk as groomsmen can get. I've never seen a groomsman destroy his tuxedo. As out of his mind he might be, they take care of their tuxedos. Why? Because they turn it back in after the wedding. Otherwise, they're buying that thing. And my point is I believe my body is a tuxedo. I'm allowed to steward it while I'm here on earth, and I'm going to have to turn it back in. And so at 64, I want to still be running circles around guys that are in their 20s. And so to feel the fear and do it anyway, you have to bring yourself to that moment and jump out of the plane. And sometimes I've jumped out with or without a parachute. You just go for it. Life is a journey of faith, and if everything was prescribed and laid out for us, I would probably not be sitting here visiting with you on your amazing podcast, videocast. I wouldn't. If I would have been gripped by fear. And so that's just, when you feel the fear, that's usually an indicator something good's about to happen. Mm-hmm. And when you feel the fear and you do it anyway, there's amazing payoffs on the other side of that jump.
All right, everyone. I don't know what number episode we're on, but we're on the Conquer the Mind podcast. I'm very excited today. We got an awesome guest with Mark Holloway. He is the founder and CEO of Property Stewards. Mark and I actually met at the Titus Center of Franchising, and I'm really excited. Mark, I don't know if this will make sense, but for some people, the viewers, there's always people that you come across in life that just have like a natural energy of just being positive, very happy people. And Mark was definitely one of those people that I came across. We sat across or next to each other at the Titus Center of Franchising, which does advisory board meetings with some of the top executives in franchising. They're helping educate college students on the opportunity in franchising. But I had the opportunity to sit with Mark for a couple hours, connect, hear more about his background, his story, his business that they are just starting to take franchising. And Mark is just really great, well, all-around guy from like family, faith, business. I think Mark is just a good example of someone that's just living in the moment and really knows what he wants. So I'm excited, Mark. I think we're going to get a lot of insights on today's episode. So thank you for joining me today.
It's my honor. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Very, very briefly, Mark, because we will dive into the story, but with Property Stewards, it's very different from the typical, property management, if you will. Can you dive into just very quickly, what is the business model and what are like those 5 primary revenue streams?
Property Stewards is not in the property management space. We get painted. Folks try an attempt to put us in that space, but we're not property managers. We don't collect rent. We are really not in the short-term rental space at all. We actually, our business model is not very complicated. We're in resort areas where there's a high density of getaway homes that folks don't live in. So I can explain our business model succinctly in saying that very term getaway home, those are our clients. We don't use the term second home, because some of our clients, you would confuse them if you referred to their second home, because they have way more than 2 homes. So we stay away from second home, and we stay away from vacation home for 2 reasons. Vacation home sounds like vacation rental. We're not in that space. And a lot of our clients don't go on vacation. And I'll unpack that. They just go to their getaway home that they have in the mountains, or they have on the ocean, or they have out in the Rockies at a ski area. When you get into that level of success, a lot of those folks don't see themselves going on vacation. And so we stay away from vacation home as a term, and we really dig down deep with the term getaway home. And a getaway home can be 1,000 square foot cabin in the woods, or it can be, some of our clients have 4 stories and elevators in a single family home. So we take all the pain away of owning that getaway home. To put it succinctly, our company motto is, we're your eyes, ears, and hands when you can't be. And our goal is for you to show up at your getaway home and goof off, not wonder why the windows didn't get washed, or you've got to get stood up by 3 contractors that never show up to put a new roof on and give you prices. We eliminate all of that pain by stepping in and stewarding that home as if it's ours. And so that's the space we're in. Typically, we've never put these metrics together of what the average profile of one of our homeowners looks like. But if they're in the middle class bracket, they would be in the upper middle class. And it would be like, Josh, you and a brother, or you and a cousin, or you and a family member decide to go in together and buy a getaway home in a faraway place. And so, but typically most of our clients, and we call those property stewards A-list clients, our goal is for them just to come and have fun. And we call those folks property stewards A-list clients for a reason. A friend of mine, he said, who wouldn't want to be an A-list client? We didn't make up that phrase, that terminology. I'm in the Deep South. I've been a lifelong Atlanta Braves fan, and they have an A-list program. If you fly Southwest Airlines, they have an A-list program. If you're in Hollywood, and Hollywood's come to Georgia, you get invited to the A-list parties. So it just kind of flowed one day that we just call our clients A-list clients. And so we've been walking on the sunny side of the street for about 17 years. And during COVID, we decided to franchise our company. And we're now in 3 states. And it's an exciting journey. And when folks were saying the sky is falling, closing the restaurants and circling the wagons and businesses were closing, my wife and I have always sort of been pioneers. And we felt like, and we prayed about it, we got discovered by a franchise broker. And he looked at our business model and he said, you guys are in white space. He says, I understand the national franchising world, and there's not a company like yours that does what you do, and you would be smart to franchise your company. And so that was a very expensive process, a very long process. And so I think, Josh, you even taught me the phrase, we're an emerging franchise brand, but we're even more emerging than emerging. We're still so new.
No, that's awesome. But the key that I think from an emerging brand is that you don't know what you don't know, and you're taking the proper steps, getting the proper resources, laying the systems, the infrastructure properly, because that's one of the biggest errors I see from emerging brands. They have founders, the CEO, CMO, all these corporate people that know how to run a business successfully, but they don't know how to run a successful franchise successfully. And that's why it's so great that you're surrounding yourself with industry veterans at the Titus Center, making these large investments so that you can take your successful business and create a successful franchise out of this. And that's what I think is so open. You go in eyes wide open. You don't know what you don't know. And one of the points I really liked when you talk about the vacation homes and it not being a vacation home, I just like the idea of that, because when you talk about vacation, it's like you're really escaping your 9 to 5, you're escaping your life, but these people are really just living life in the present. There is no real vacation. It's really just living life. And I think that's just really powerful and something I would honestly like to start using in my own life rather than going on vacations, but you're just living in the moment and living in different places. So I think that's really interesting, Mark. And now I want to dive into a little bit of the story and helping people. You know, there's a lot of people, whether they have a business, they want a franchise, they're looking at franchises, or even maybe just starting their own business right now. I think there's a lot of insights from your own story and taking it really step by step. That's really powerful. But starting off, I know you were a Gator just like me. You graduated from University of Florida.
Absolutely. Go Gators.
Let's go. So you grew up in the South. You end up going to University of Florida. Can you talk to us a little bit about going to University of Florida, coming out of University of Florida? I know you pursued a degree in journalism. So how did that all evolve into business ownership and entrepreneurship? What was that whole transition like? Did you experience corporate America after graduating, or what was that path like?
I got a degree in 1983 from the School of Journalism at the University of Florida, and I was a television broadcast major, and I pursued that career for 5 years out of college. I was a news anchor and a television reporter, and I was also the legislative reporter at the CBS affiliate in Macon, Georgia, WMAZ TV. And then the Chamber of Commerce world came a knocking, and I pivoted that career into the Chamber of Commerce world, where for a long time I ran the Chamber's biggest department, and became a registered lobbyist. And so I spent a lot of time at the state capitol and in Washington, D.C. And then I got promoted within that Chamber of Commerce to economic development. And those are the folks that bring industry to your community and create jobs. And so I did that. So there's a natural transition. And I had a really good friend. He's like a big brother to me. He told me when I was in my 20s, he said, when you hit 30, you're going to change careers. And I called him. I was 28 years old. And I said, you were right. I'm 2 years ahead of you, of your prediction. I'm leaving the television broadcast world. And it was a great career. I got to go to Europe. I got to go to California. I got sent on special assignment. It was great. But I said, I'm going into the Chamber of Commerce economic development world at 28. And it was funny looking back. And so I think it's really more common in a career path to change careers if you're making the right career changes. If you just can't figure out who you are, you need to figure out who you are, get comfortable in your skin, figure out what your God wiring is, and then flourish in it, because otherwise you'll look back over 40, 50 years and you just bounce around. You got W-2s that could wallpaper a wall. But anyway, when I look back over my life, I'm 64. I went from doing that to, oddly, I went into the ministry at 33. I'd always had a passion for young people. And for about 15 years, I was a staff pastor of a vibrant, growing congregation. And then we had an opportunity to move here to the mountains of Appalachia. We're 2 hours north of Atlanta. And we moved here, and this is where our story, sort of Property Stewards, sort of begins. I had 2 teenagers. Our kids are grown now. But my wife and I, we moved here to the mountains. We were really familiar with Appalachia. We would bring our students up here backpacking, and we'd been whitewater rafting. And so it's really rare to catch me indoors, like for this visit with you, Josh, because I would rather be outdoors. But I bought a pressure washer in 2007, and the recession was starting. And by 2008, it was really bad. And for you young folks, you can study some of the metrics about what it was like. But all we did was onboard clients. I started out refinishing a log home of an orthopedic surgeon in Flagler Beach, and he had a cabin up here in the mountains of Georgia. And I got what I thought was a prank call asking if I could make his home look like ours, because I'd refinished our natural cedar home and discovered all this beautiful cedar underneath. And in about 3 weeks, my home was transformed. And that's how we got discovered. And so we sort of became the log home refinishing expert in the region and found a niche market. But something really interesting happened along the way, Josh. These folks whose homes we were pressure washing and cleaning up, and I've got a lot of advanced college degrees, and here I am operating a pressure washer. They lived far, far away from here, and they had getaway homes here. They started asking me, "Can you take care of our home?" And I said, "I don't even know what that means." I literally would tell that to the homeowner. And I remember one of our very, very early homeowners, she owned a horse farm outside of Athens, Georgia, a home in Virginia, a condo in Florida, and a beautiful home here on Lake Burton in the mountains. And so she's one of the early ones why I don't say second home. And she actually told me what to do at her home. And she wanted us in her home on a regular basis, looking for all kinds of trouble spots or vandalism or security breaches or you name it. And so she helped me build the early days. And back then we were Fresh Start Raven, because we're in Raven County. And then we would start another LLC, Fresh Start Property Stewards. Yeah. And so we started stewarding clients' homes as if they're ours. And we started to onboard more and more A-list clients as time went by. We didn't even call them A-list clients until about 2015. And to go back to what you said, there's a beautiful phrase in franchising that I didn't know. I didn't even know it existed. When the broker who discovered us over a stolen bicycle, I can unpack that if you want to know. He started using phrases like reoccurring revenue. And I said, wait a minute. I said, I can write you an essay. I'm a journalist about business, but don't ask me. I took one accounting class and got an A in it. And I took an economics class at Florida. But beyond that, I said, so talk to me about reoccurring revenue. What does that mean? And so he explained it to me. But we started having folks send us checks every month
Wow.
to take care of their homes. In addition to all the other ways that we've monetized our business model. And so we're bumping along on the sunny side of the street, and we're operating in all these revenue streams. I didn't even know to call them that. I mean, I kind of could figure out in context clues what a revenue stream is. But the broker who discovered us, his name is Chris Goethe, he discovered us and he started to identify our revenue streams. And I was like, whoa, time out a minute, wait a minute. And so once he finished that conversation with me, he had a bicycle stolen in Hilton Head. He comes to his Rotary Club and he's lamenting these two nice bikes that got stolen. And a fellow Rotarian in Toccoa, Georgia says, I've got a buddy. He and his wife just came back from Italy with a brand new road bike. And he's your size. And so I said, if you wanted me to unpack that story, I just unpacked it for you. So he ends up finding out by a mutual friend, she owns 3 McDonald's.
Oh, wow.
About me, he comes up, looks at my road bike, because now I have 2 nice road bikes, and he buys it. So we stand in my driveway for an hour and a half, and he starts to really get an idea of what we're about.
Yeah.
And so Fresh Start Property Stewards, we said goodbye to Fresh Start, because we would give your home a fresh start. And our consulting team, through the process, they said, tell us about your name. We're in love with Property Stewards. And they said it would behoove you to try and buy the .com. Our daughter, she's our COO, and she said the next day, she said, Daddy, I got good news and bad news. She said, you can buy propertystewards.com, and it's going to be $2,800. I said, some smart entrepreneur bought that name for probably $16 at GoDaddy, but I would spend 10 grand to own propertystewards.com. So we bought that, and that was before COVID. We started the process, or right during COVID. We really dove deep into the franchising process, and we got our franchise disclosure document nailed down, and that requires a specialist attorney. But all of that happened, and now today we went from one pressure washer I bought in 2007 just to feed my family, and I still have that unit, by the way. It didn't croak; it just started to show signs of old age, and I parked it in our warehouse. And I'm so glad I did, because we've gone through so many pressure washers in 17 years of business. But I kept that one, and I named him Old Red. So when you come to town, and I'll take you rock climbing, Josh, I'll show you Old Red. But so today we have a lot of A-list clients in our mountain resort area. And like I alluded to earlier, we're in 3 states. We're in Charleston, Property Stewards Charleston, and Property Stewards Jacksonville, and we're loaded for bear. We're wanting to award more territories. That's how we got to where we are today.
No, that's incredible, Mark. I appreciate you sharing. And I think all those points are very, very interesting. One of the things that I'm curious about, going back to kind of like the stolen bike story, you're out there like in the driveway, and this random guy just starts telling you like how to run your own business. I think for a lot of us, we have so much pride in what we're doing. It's like, no, it's my way. Like, why are you telling me to do this? I've already accomplished success. Don't tell me how to do this. What is it like with the mindset being, the podcast, Conquer the Mind? Why were you like so open to other people's ideas? And even today, trying to surround yourself with the advisory board at the Titus Center, it wasn't always like your way or the highway, but you have this open mindset of really growth and trying to do better, if that makes sense.
I'm passionate about mentoring.
Yeah.
And to use a biblical concept, discipleship. Jesus calls us to make disciples. He doesn't call us to make converts. And at the core of that is reproducing your life, is reproducing who you are, what your core values are, taking the things that are really, really great in your character and in your mind and in your heart, and passing them along. And I am a student, absolutely a student of life. I'm always wanting to learn. It's a really sad day when you think you've got it all figured out. And those types of people, and I know those types of people, that the moment you tell them something, they want to tell you that they've done it and they've done it better. And pride is poison. Yeah. Pride is poison, and it really poisons the well, if you will. And so if we are about learning, I believe in the preciousness of others. I believe in the preciousness of who you are, Josh, and there's things that you have going on that I can learn. There's things that you're doing, that there's some things you figured out as a young man that I need to know, and I need to onboard into my heart and into my life and into my business model. And so if I ever get to that place where I stop learning, that's not going to be a very good moment. And so I'm all about adventure. And if you're into adventure, there's things to learn how to not die. I've been a certified rock climbing guide as a hobby. It's not a side hustle business, probably since 2011. For 9 years, I've been on our search and rescue team, and I'm an advanced swiftwater rescue swimmer, and I'm an advanced ropes rescue team member. And that translates really. I'm trained to rappel down into Tallulah Gorge, which is just 10 minutes south of here. Go on rappel, and so when you have, and I bring all that up, and I'm also an emergency medical responder, which is a notch below an EMT. All of those things involve learning. All of those things involve new equipment and the latest technology that can keep you alive or make things more efficient when we're trying to rescue a victim who's fallen off the side of the mountain or other scenarios. There's always equipment that is always state of the art. Talk to me a year from now, and the stuff that was a state of the art a year ago may no longer be state of the art. And what does that require? That requires me keeping my brain fresh and staying teachable. And when folks come along and discover we're doing something right that I didn't know we were doing right, I was just trying to feed my family. And speaking to young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs out there that you have an entrepreneurial fire in you and you just now are discovering it. Within our third year of business, and the recession was raging, by 2009, Carol and I took 6 weeks vacation.
Okay.
And let that sink in a minute. When you own your own company, you don't submit a vacation request form ever again. Yeah. But we had reached the place of taking care of clients' homes that we were able to slip away for 6 different weeks and go have fun. Mm-hmm. And we don't have that margin really right now because the franchising effort and our local company, the demands, but I believe in continuing to work towards a goal of playing harder. I've always worked hard and played hard, but I want to play more in this season of my life. Yes. My wife, Carol, and I, we've been happily married. She's still my girlfriend for 43 years. We did take 2 weeks and go up to Maine for our 40th wedding anniversary. We're coming up on 43 years, but I'm hoping that's my desire is to get back to goofing off more. But our business model lent itself, even back in 2009, that we took 6 weeks vacation. Again, not all at one time, but that's how much margin being an entrepreneur creates. And on that note, our business model, Josh, is we don't work. Now, we do take care of our clients' homes at a really, really high level. And we take out, the best we can, we take out all the pain points of owning a getaway home. This is going to sound like a riddle, but we don't work nights and weekends and holidays. And that's important for folks that want to have a life. Folks that are in retail, it's a tough, tough place. My son-in-law, my daughter came out of the restaurant world, and Victoria missed 7 years, 7 Mother's Days in a row. And she lived down the road in Atlanta, was dictated by that restaurant and retail world. And our company, we put out all the fires for our clients. We handle all their emergencies, but we have some systems in place that we can do all of those things without it consuming every waking hour. And our clients have access to our company if a toilet overflows or the whole house generator croaks or a tree comes down. They have access to us for all those emergencies. And so it really does, our business model really does establish a true work-life balance where you can actually, in fact, our whole culture within our companies, we clock out at 5 o'clock. Now, if you're a client and you've got a problem, you reach out to us. You have our cell phone numbers. But other than that, we clock out. We don't talk about work after 5 o'clock. I would never, unless there's an emergency, I would never reach out to one of our team members on a Saturday and Sunday and talk about work. It's more like, how's your mom and them? Or did you get your truck stuck on purpose in the woods, in a swamp, or whatever? And so that's really important to us, that our team knows that they can breathe they have another life outside of property stewards. And that's really important. And especially when we onboard a new A-list client, because some of these folks are super driven and super powerful. We have a lot of folks in the C-suite that are A-list clients, and these folks are very accustomed to getting their way and being bougie. Not all of them. In fact, a small minority of them, but they can be very demanding for stuff that's not life-threatening.
Okay.
When we interview them and they're interviewing us and they're really nice homes, we broach that subject on the front end before they're even clients. We just say, if you want to talk about next fall decoration at your home, don't expect a call back on the weekend or at night. We will call you back. Now, if you've got a serious emergency, trees blocking the driveway on the house, call us at 2 a.m. and we will put that fire out. But at the core of all of that is probably getting back to honoring the preciousness of others. And if you do that, I think you'll flourish. I think your company will thrive. Because I care more about my team as humans first and as a second. And that's always a priority. I will always look our team in the eye and say, I will always care about you as a person first.
Yeah.
What you can do for our company second or third. And keeping those priorities in line, I think, leads to a very healthy corporate culture.
That's really awesome, Mark. And one of the things I've noticed that you've done so well is really found balance, but you found success in all these different things, whether it's business, family, out in nature. I know you write a lot as well. Like, you do all these different things. And for a lot of people, it's hard to even have success in one thing, but to have success in all these different things is always very difficult. And then you allude to having that kind of 9-to-5 balance, especially like in a business, as a business owner. How are you able to maintain like that 9-to-5 balance and being able to have success in not only business, but family, doing what you do in nature? All these things are just so cool. And, as you alluded to, you're not someone that's just sitting in front of their desk after this call. You're going out in nature. You're really just living life like in the moment, but you're also providing for your family. And really, when it comes down to having that control over your future, it's really a good definition of someone that has that control over their future, has that balance between success, wealth, health, happiness, family. How do you go about having success in all these different things and balancing each one?
How old are you, Josh?
I'm 25.
25. Well, you keep hammering on something you may not be aware of, and you talk about staying in the present. The future is always perfect, unless you're a worrywart, and I'm not a worrywart. I let my optimism beat the crap out of my pessimism all the time. So I'm not talking to the worrywarts, but to everybody else, the future is always perfect.
Yeah.
The way you imagine something in the future is always perfect. So don't live in the future, because you'll squander your life if you just live in the future, because the future is very Pollyannish. It's always perfect. The future is perfect. So don't live in the future. The past, the mistakes of your past will suffocate you, or they'll haunt you or taunt you. And so you can't live in your past. And we talk about pride. If you've done a lot of great things in your past, you still don't want to live in the past and just get all puffed up, because the past will cripple you. Yeah. The future is perfect, and you won't ever reach perfection. And so you've already mentioned it twice, and I've just been listening to you, and you've talked about staying in the present. And the present is a beautiful place, because there's a lot of peace in the present if you really enjoy the journey, and if you're really embracing that God wiring. I don't really spend a lot of time in the future. I do dream, and I'm not just a dreamer. I execute the things that I dream about. I try and be a really good vision caster. But to come back to this, you said 26 years old?
25 years old.
25. Come back to this young Josh at 25 who's caught a vision, and really you understand the power of the present. And to the short answer on how to pull off being able to have that work-life balance and to stay in the present, for us anyway, with our company, it starts early on when you are visiting with a client on the front end. Because if you allow just one client that has gobs more money than you do to dictate what's important for you, that's the wheels are already coming off the cart. And so I don't have any sales training. I've never taken a sales class, but a mentor in my life, I told him a scenario, and he says, you know what? You have just demonstrated with textbook accuracy a thing called the takeaway. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. And this guy's a retired executive with Allstate, so he knows a little bit about sales. And he said, you've just executed the takeaway. I said, I think I know in context. What are you talking about? So, Josh, we can role play, and you've got a big home on the ocean, maybe 8,000 square foot, and you're not there. You live in Boston, but you come down to West Palm, for example, and you and I sit down and we meet, and you tell me about all your pain points, and you don't even know you have all this pain in your life, because it's a big pain to have multiple homes. Because if you have 4 homes, you have 4 or 5 or more water heaters and HVAC systems, and it's a big pain. So now we're meeting, and usually those meetings last about 2 hours. We're sitting in your living room, by the way. Our business model doesn't even require brick and mortar. We're sitting in your living room. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the conversation, I'll say, well, Josh, it's been great meeting you and your wife and your dog, Rover. And we're going to take a few days, and we're going to make sure that we're a good fit for you. And you're like nodding, yes, that's right. You're going to take all the pain away, and you're going to be our house managers and whatever. But this is the takeaway, or this is where I take something away. So I'd say, so we want to make sure that we're a good fit for you. But Josh, we're going to take a few days to make sure you're a right fit for us. Mm. And you can see the sobering reality hit them at that exact moment, because now they realize, oh, shoot, I've just gotten interviewed myself by this property stewards person, that we've got to demonstrate to them that we're a good fit for them. And so my friend Joe Jamerson, he told me that what that is the takeaway. I put something out on the table, and then I take it back. So I come and I'm promising that I'm going to take exquisite care of your getaway home. And then all of a sudden I tell you, but we're going to evaluate to make sure you're a good fit for us. That levels the playing field. And we have just onboarded another founder of a major company. I think we're in the process of onboarding them. And you know what? They're not that level of folks. They're used to going to the country club and getting seated for a meal or getting their tea time when they want it. And when you bring that element of power into the conversation, it can really disrupt the normal person's life. That now I have to feel like I've got to cater to their every whim. And we had a client one time that they were occupying space in my brain rent-free for a couple of years, and I realized this is not where I want to be. This is not the kind of client we want to have. But so the conversation, really, that place of joy is, I believe, here's a really, really old old word, and that's Sabbath. I believe the Sabbath principle of rest. I believe that rest is a weapon. I don't believe that rest is for the wussies. I believe that rest is a weapon. And if you and I are going to go to battle, Josh, and you and I are highly trained, and we're going to go into battle together, I want to know that you're not sleep deprived. I want to know that you're well rested and I'm well rested, and we're going to be able to go into battle together, because rest is a weapon, and it's not for the faint in heart. And so being able to discipline your life to be able to form those pockets of rest on a regular basis actually make you a better entrepreneur, a better businesswoman, a better human, a better husband, a better dad. My wife and I are expectant first-time grandparents. Our daughter and son-in-law are expecting. So I really can't articulate. I think there's human emotions that don't have words for them. I just know that there's a dimension out there that we don't have words. And this is an example. I don't have words for what it's going to be like to hold my first grandchild. But none of that's really possible if I'm a workaholic. And burning out, you burn out for one reason. You don't have any firewood. It's not the stress. It's not the demands on you, Josh, or any of us. You burn out. Fires burn out because there's not a fuel source. Or somebody put the fire out. But for this analogy, burning out is because you just run out of fuel. And what fuels me is the goof off mark, is the play mark. It's the hanging off the side of a rock face, Mark, or I'm a
Mm.
road cyclist. My number one passion will always be a distance runner. I would rather be running than most anything else because I believe in the runner's high. I confess to it. I
Mhm.
embrace it. All those drugs your body and your brain release are all true.
Mm.
Endorphins and dopamine and adrenaline, and there's some others. So I would rather be out running because I can clear my head. And so there's really um, a place for balance. And Truett Cathy, he was an amazing man. I got to meet him. Recently we have an A-list client. They own 3 Chick-fil-A's, and
Mm.
I'll let you just unpack that on your own time. To own more than one is huge. And they gave us a private VIP tour of Chick-fil-A World Headquarters. And Truett Cathy, one of the reasons their restaurants are closed on Sundays, you would think it's for Christian reasons, and it is, but
Mm.
they don't run out of straws on Sundays. They don't have any employee drama on Sundays. They don't have machines that break on Sundays. They don't have any shipments that don't show up on Sundays. And the managers know on Sundays there's not going to be anybody not showing up for work. And so it's easier to succeed than fail is one of his books, Truett Cathy wrote, and I've adopted that. But rest is a weapon, and taking time, because I can't get yesterday back. I don't want to get preachy. I probably already have. You can't get yesterday back. Yesterday was Memorial Day, and the things that happened yesterday, I can't get back. Things that didn't happen yesterday, I can't get back. And so it's about redeeming the day, redeeming the present, and staying in the present.
Mm. That's awesome, Mark. You gave me a lot to unpack, and these are all things that I've been thinking about. I'm reading The Power of One More right now, and if you haven't read it, it's definitely recommend to anyone listening to this. And literally exactly what you're talking about with having that willpower. So me personally, I've always been someone that, screw balance, just work, 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 it'll pay dividends later on. But I've always thought of like the power of willpower. Like the more work you put in, the more results you'll get. But every single person has the same, like in the gas tank, if you will. And it's basically you want to dedicate what matters most up front, and then the law of domino effects will take place, where if you focus on what's most important, then the smaller things will start to take place as well. But I've always
Dave Ramsey,
yeah.
Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates have something in common with you and I. They have 24 hours in a day. So how you choose to spend it. So I bet you never thought you'd be put on in the same conversation with Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and Dave Ramsey and Oprah Winfrey. Let's throw her into the mix. We all share something in common. We're
Yeah.
given 24 hours in a day, and what we choose to do with it is important. If you're going to grind, every day thinking you're going to get ahead, and you're going to ignore um, the need to rest and to have a clear head, you're going to end up crashing.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I keep a file on my phone of books that I want to read. And what did you say? The Power of One More?
Yeah, by Gary Keller. It's fantastic. It's literally exactly what we're talking about, and something that I've gone through, where it's like you can work, 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 but in reality, you're sacrificing all these other things. And in life, perfect. In life, there's gonna be a final buzzer at some point, and I can't control when that's gonna be. It could be next week for that, all I know.
Wow.
And I've sacrificed all these things outside of work because I think in 5, 10 years, I will be able to provide all these things for my family. But like I could be doing all this and it won't pay off because I could be gone next week. And that's where it really hit me, where you need to have this balance in the moment. And because you don't know what that next year will look like, that 5 years. And one of the other point that I thought was really interesting is you brought up that I talk about living in the present a lot. And it is consciously where I bring that up, with the Conquer the Mind being the podcast. I'm a big fan where if you don't live your life consciously, subconsciously, life's just going to take you by, and you're not going to really ever have that control over your future that I've seen you accomplish. And as you alluded to, I've been there before. I've been someone that only worries about the past. And, those are people that are depressed, honestly, just living in the past. And I've also been someone that worries constantly about the future. And those are anxious people, just constantly worrying about all these things. And I love your point on the future's always perfect. You can't control it, but just knowing that it is perfect and you can't control all these different things, I think is really powerful. And the most happy people, as you alluded to, they live in the present. that's something I'm constantly striving to do. And as we talk about the balance, the willpower, conquering the mind, and you can really conquer anything. So Mark, I loved everything that you said. I think that's very powerful stuff and something as a young entrepreneur I'm going through as well. And Mark, one of the things you actually posted this on LinkedIn, and you talked about the entrepreneurial fire in you may be hidden, but how do you ignite that flame? And you talk about don't letting the entrepreneurial passion die a slow death, but really feel the fear and jump anyway. Can you talk about what you mean by that for a lot of people that, 70% of people, as Dennis Schooley alluded to, consider business ownership, but less than 1% even take those next steps. What did you mean by that quote, and why should someone jump anyway?
If you and I are going to go skydiving, and that's a bucket list for me, and
Okay.
there's some inherent fears that are built into that. You're jumping out of a plane.
Yeah.
And so to feel the fear and do it anyway, you have to bring yourself to that moment and jump out of the plane. And sometimes I've jumped out with or without a parachute. You just go for it. Life is a journey of faith. And if everything was prescribed and laid out for us, I would probably not be sitting here visiting with you on your amazing podcast, video cast. I wouldn't. If I would have been gripped by fear. And so that's just you. When you feel the fear, that's usually an indicator something good's about to happen. And when you feel the fear and you do it anyway, there's amazing payoffs on the other side of that jump. And if you never jump, and I don't want to hurt feelings here, but if you don't jump, you're going to be destined to lick stamps at the post office or file Dewey Decimal cards for the rest of your life. And how do you know, and I'm not busting on the librarians and the postal workers, but not everybody's wired for the entrepreneurial world. They aren't. And I understand that, and I appreciate that. In fact, the three checkoffs to own one of our territories, you have to understand the principle of stewardship. Number one, do you fit our business culture? Number two, you have to have the money to buy a franchise. Franchises aren't free. And number three, you have to be organized. And there's probably a fourth, and you've got to have an entrepreneurial fire in you. And the way you find out, I don't know if we're still on.
I can hear you, Mark, loud and clear. I don't know. Can you hear me right now? I don't know what happened to my video, but I've heard everything you've been saying, and it's been awesome.
I think the way to discover if you have an entrepreneurial fire is if you're tired of climbing the dadgum ladder and you want to own the ladder. If it's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong with working for the man. I started out as a bag boy, and then I started selling cameras at the PX in Frankfurt, Germany. My dad was a career decorated combat officer. And so working for the man builds great personal culture. Both my kids worked at Chick-fil-A, and that's opened more doors for them. It got more heads to turn their way. And so I'm not against working for the man, but to entrepreneurial fire, I tell folks, go find your entrepreneurial fire and then ignite it, fan it, flame it, pour fuel on it, pour gas on it, pour nitroglycerin on it, and watch what happens. If you have that entrepreneurial fire, is everybody wired to become an entrepreneur? Probably not. I heard Jerry Seinfeld say, to become a medical doctor or a proctologist, I mean, that motivates some folks, but why? So I'm thankful for proctologists. I really am. There's a quote of the day, but and that entrepreneurial fire that's in you, I think you start to recognize it. And usually the tip off is pain. If there's pain in your life, especially in generating income, if there's pain there, you should address it. You should address the pain and figure out why it's there, because pain can be a calling. If you've studied the culture of an eagle, the mama eagle, she builds this really soft, cushy nest for her baby eagle. Yeah, she goes and she flies down off the interstate and she gets little foam shreds from maybe a cushion that blew off a trailer, and then she puts that in the nest, and she builds this beautiful nest, and it's super cushy and it's super soft, filled with straw. But as that eagle starts to mature and grow and develop, she starts to dismantle that nest. Eventually, you've got the equivalent of like a a 13 or 14-year-old just in their teen years of an eagle sitting on a cold, wet, rainy rock, and the nest is gone. And the point of that is it's discomfort. And if there's discomfort in your career, and so eventually if the eagle's never flown 1 gigasecond in its life. It's on a rock cliff. And if the eagle doesn't jump out, the mom will push the eagle out. And all of a sudden it's plummeting to the earth, and it starts to open up its wings, and it's like, wait a minute, I think I can fly. And if there's discomfort, and the discomfort is planned, and it's very intentional on the mama eagle's part. She starts to dismantle that cushy place of where that eagle has just been allowed to stay comfortable. And eventually you're sitting in a nest that's just pokey twigs that are sticking in you. And then if you don't get the message, then she takes and just shoves the nest off the cliff. And the entrepreneur is similar in my head. The entrepreneur, if you long for something more, and if you long for owning the ladder instead of climbing the ladder, or if you're in a really bad culture where there's sexists to your left and right, or it's just a bad culture, and you start, there's fewer days going to the office that are more filled with joy, and there's more days filled with regret. Don't wake up 40. Don't wake up when you're 50. Don't wake up when you're 60 and you've squandered. You can't get those years back and those decades back. And so I would pray, find out if there's an entrepreneur inside you. And if there is, go start washing cars in the neighborhood. When I was a student pastor, I would tell some of my guys, don't work at McDonald's, and they tell you, sorry about McDonald's, don't work in the fast food world. And they tell you when you can go on a ski trip or youth trip and when you can't. Go detail cars and become your own boss. And I watched some young men become their own bosses, and some young ladies become their own bosses. And today, one of them, he took a cash out. He started a company called Grassroots Coffee. He ended up being in 400 grocery stores, and he was one of the guys that went around the country club neighborhood and offered to wash cars. And I said, you show up in a clean car, and you show up dressed really sharp, and in no time he had more money than he knew what to do with, and he got to go on every single youth trip he ever wanted to go on. And his name is Spencer Young. And so he's a young man that I think cultivated and recognized the light bulb went off in his head. Yeah, I think I can do better at generating income for myself than just going working at minimum wage. And so I would challenge anybody to really do some soul searching to see if there's an entrepreneur inside you. I believe there's probably an entrepreneurial flame in all of us. And if you flame it or fan that flame, you can start a roaring fire.
That's super powerful, Mark. If someone, they're considering whether it's franchising, business ownership, what are like some of those early traits like inside them that can like kind of give them the confidence that, yes, I can start to do something like this? You may not have every skill in the book. Maybe you don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. What gives you the confidence that you've considered business ownership? You want to have that control over your future. You want to provide for your family, live life on your own terms. But, it could be, 6, 12, maybe 24 months to ramp up that business. What gives you the confidence that you could potentially change your lifestyle and have success in business?
I just had the opportunity recently to interview Eugene Houghton, and he is the president of Dollywood. And not just Dollywood, but the Dollywood Company. And I write for a really popular regional magazine called The Laurel of Northeast Georgia. And I've had the blessing of writing for this magazine for 14 years. And I write a column called Loving the Journey. And the owner of the magazine, Tracy McCoy, lets me write about whatever I want. So I went to Dollywood. It's only about 2 hours from us, in Sevierville, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge area. And I interviewed the president of Dollywood Company. And it's a really cool theme park. And there's a quote in my column that's actually going to hit the streets in about a week, where he says a lot of successful theme park and amusement park companies and the high brass, they really examine what they do. They spend a lot of mental equity examining what they do. And Eugene taught me, he says, we examine why we do what we do. And I know it's becoming a little bit cliche to know your why, but that would be my short answer, is to figure out what your why is. Because it's not about money. And I want to just say that just as emphatically as I possibly can, that to become an entrepreneur cannot be about money. When I'm engaging in franchisee candidate conversations,
Yeah.
and I hear, so tell me about talk about the top line, talk about the money. I start to push back, at least in my head and my heart. I start to push back because it can't be about money. Because Josh, is $1 million enough for you? If it is, the next guy may want 5 million. And if 5 million is not enough, you want 5 billion. And so it can't be about money, because money will grow wings and fly away. And so your motivation can't be about money. Now, if you're struggling to make ends meet, money is important. The love of money is the root of all evil. Money is not the root of all evil. That's a really bad quote when you hear that money is the root of all evil. That's stupid. That's just stupid. It's not biblical. But loving money is dangerous, and it'll bring an end to you. There's a story of a lady who was fabulously wealthy, and she was in her late 60s, and she was seen from the street in her mansion pacing at 2 a.m. every night at 2 a.m. because she was worried about her money, and she had tons of money. So money's not the answer. The money can't be your why. Our why at Property Stewards, our why is not very complicated. We love solving your problem. In fact, you and I sat side by side when we had that speaker with his acrostic, and he asked me about my why, and I said, we love solving people's problems. If your jet ski won't crank, we actually solved that problem before it wouldn't crank, and we had the mechanics have it ready for your season for when you come to stay at your getaway home. If your ice maker's not making ice, we solve those problems. So our why, and so is solving our A-list clients' problems, but the conversation really starts with, what is your why? Why are you here? What? And there's another myth that I think is just a bunch of crap. And that if you set your mind to it, Josh, you can be whatever you want to be. That's dumb. That doesn't even make sense. If you're horrible in science and math, you're not. And you wake up, they told me in school I could be whatever. Try and become a NASA scientist with no math and science. So find out what your wiring is, find out what your why is, and then find out how you're wired. And if you're petrified if speaking in front of people, you either need to go take classes or just not spend a lot of time speaking in front of crowds. That's not your wiring. So I think the short answer is, and it's becoming so cliche, but things that are cliche have a lot of truth. And knowing what your why is important.
Yeah.
And the conversation starts there. Why are you here? And what is your why? And that why may change. You heard my story. When I was 28, my career changed. I don't know that my why changed, but knowing what your why is the launching pad, especially for entrepreneurs. And it can't be about money. It can't. It's got to be about so much more.
No, I think that's really powerful in terms of money. Yeah, I think it really just enhances who you are, and there's bad people, there's good people, and money will kind of just enhance who you are. And yeah, I'm totally on board with the why statement. I think, yeah, people say it's cliche, but I think, Simon Sinek's Start With Why is just such a great book. In my opinion, your life does not start until you have that why statement figured out. It doesn't mean you can't be happy, you can't have great moments, but you're not working towards something if you don't have a why or that mission statement. So you can have a great day, but then the next day you can have a great day. And if you don't have that mission, that why statement, you're not really working towards something. And it makes those great days a lot harder, where you feel like things are happening to you rather than things are happening for you, and really empowering you to take your career, your business to that next level. One of the things you talk about with finding that why statement, do you think a why statement, when you have your personal why, you have a business, does the business fall under your personal why, or does the personal and business have two different why mission statements?
Well, first of all, when are you going to write your book? Secondly, there's a movie that won gobs of Academy Awards called Chariots of Fire, and the main character in the movie is based on a real life person, and he's he's a distance runner, and he said that God feels pleasure when I run. And I think my why, I believe that we're a three-legged stool. I believe we're made up spirit, soul, and body. So I am a spirit, I have a soul, and I live in a body. And when you start to figure that out, you can figure that out at a young age. But a three-legged stool, you kick one of the legs out, that stool's going to fall over. I know some folks who are extremely intentional about reading and always learning and expanding their mind and growing, and yet they don't take care of their physical body. I know preachers that take care of their spirit, or Christians that take really good care of their spirit man, and maybe even their soul man, but they eat too many Twinkies, and their body is out of balance. And so I believe if you really dive into that three-legged stool and keep all of those healthy, that three-legged stool is going to stand. And so my why permeates spirit, soul, and body for me. I live my life to glorify God, and it starts there, and that permeates into my business culture, that I sleep really good at night because I've never been a crook, or I've never tried to shaft a client or just take a shortcut for a client. I always want to do what's best because I'm stewarding their things that mean a lot to them, their getaway home and their vehicles that are there and their watercraft that are there. We steward those things. And so God he keeps really careful records. He's not an ogre that smashes me like a bug if I make a mistake. And so that part of my why permeates. And on the body, I believe that my body is on loan. I believe that my body is a rented tuxedo. I'm sure you've been to some weddings. At my age, I've been to a lot of weddings. We're going to my nephew's wedding coming up this Saturday. And I've never seen as drunk as groomsmen can get. I've never seen a groomsman destroy his tuxedo. As out of his mind he might be, they take care of their tuxedos. Why? Because they turn it back in after the wedding. Otherwise, they're buying that thing. And my point is I believe my body is a tuxedo. I'm allowed to steward it while I'm here on earth, and I'm going to have to turn it back in. And so at 64, I want to still be running circles around guys that are in their 20s as far as stamina and physical endurance. Part of that's ego. Part of that you can relate as a male. That's our male pride. But a big part of it is if I take really good care of my physical body, and I love what you said about the final buzzer. Had a really sad encounter 2 weeks ago. Two guys that are 19 years old. We have a really famous natural phenomenon called the Tallulah Gorge, and there were two young men. They broke some of the rules, and they went where they weren't supposed to go, and we had to recover one of the bodies. And okay. I thought about when you said what you did, man, his final buzzer, it rang too soon. And at 19, when I was 19, I got married at 21, I got engaged at 20. And at 19, man, I was still in college. And what final buzzer rang for him that day 2 weeks ago? It's so sobering that life is really a vapor. And so my why, I don't really have, now we do clock out. We talk about that. We do clock out, and that's to maintain a work-life balance. But my why permeates all three of the things that who I am. And if I take really, really good care of my physical body, and I pay attention to what my resting heart rate is, and I get annual wellness exams. And in the past, when I've given blood, the folks taking my blood and they take your pulse and stuff, they're alarmed at first. And they go, "Are you a runner?" I'm like, "I am." And that's okay. That's why you have a resting heart rate right now, 55 beats per minute. And so I believe that if I take good care of my physical body, my mind, always challenging myself, I would like to think that there's a reward for putting in the effort. And if I'm putting in the effort to take care of my physical body, my spirit, my soul, there's going to be a payday. There's going to be a payday down the road when I turn in my tuxedo, and I turn in a tuxedo that may be scarred and scraped and tattered a little bit, which is fine, but that I've stewarded my body well, my heart well, my mind well. And when I do those things, life is good.
Yeah, You can't see, but I literally have like goosebumps on my arms. Mark, you got me fired up. I love everything that you're saying. And I appreciate you sharing that moment with the 19-year-old. And yeah, it really makes you rethink everything in life in terms of you literally just never know everyone's final buzzers. You literally never know when it's going to ring. And it's just so unfortunate. And, finally, to kind of wrap up the podcast, I know our time's starting to wind down. I think what would be super helpful, and we're talking about the why statement, which clearly very powerful to you as well as myself. But you talk about, right now you could be laying on a beach right now, enjoying retirement. What keeps you so fired up, so motivated, so passionate, not only about your business, but family, going out in nature, helping other people, what keeps you so fired up? No matter what, you're so stuck on your mission, your why. What prevents you from just sitting out on a beach and, just kicking back?
The short answer is I don't ever want to retire. I don't believe that retirement is a biblical concept. I believe in pivoting. I believe in transitioning and ordering my life in a way financially that I'll be at a place where I can do more goofing off, but I really don't want to ever stop. And I think I've got a friend, his name is Stan Cottrell, and he ran at 78 years of age. He ran from Los Angeles to the Washington Monument at 78. He ran 30 miles a day. This was just a couple years ago. And Stan says this, he says, if you rest, you rust. Now that sounds contradictory when I just said that rest is a weapon, but in this context, when you rest, you rust. And I don't want to be that old fart that just knows everything and he's been there, done that. And let me tell you how I did it. I don't want to be that guy. And so I don't ever want to retire. I do want to maybe transition and put my 24 equity, that's my 24 hours in the day. I want to maybe shift some of my equity, my portfolio, if you will. And time is a blessing. Time is, like we already talked about, the things we have in common with some of the greatest multi-billionaires, household names. We all have something in common. And so I want to shift some of my time equity as I get older to some other pursuits. But I want to continue with Property Stewards. It's a dream I never saw coming. I thought I would be a little gray-haired man. I'm white-haired, but driving around in my nice pickup truck, checking on my clients' homes right here in Rabun County. And instead I'm going in the opposite direction now, franchising and managing an amazing team. I don't manage them. Andy Stanley's he's a great guy and he's a personal friend. And he says, the CEO that thinks he knows everything and he can go down into the shipping area or a receiving area and he can act like he knows everything. You're just an idiot. And that's my condensed version of something he recently said. The higher up you are in your organization, the less you know. And so it's important to have the right people and to cultivate and nurture those relationships with your leadership team because they know a lot more than you. And I know less and less with each passing day. And so I just want to transfer almost like an investment portfolio. I want to transfer my time equity into other areas, but I never want to retire. I never say never. I never dreamed that I would be a franchisor and CEO and founder. Never. I just never would have. And at 65, but you study some of the case studies like Harlan Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken. He didn't hit his stride till he was 65. Truett Cathy, some of the things that Truett Cathy, these are ironically both guys that made lots of money with chicken, but Truett Cathy, he just worked hard and he understood the value of working hard. If you're not working hard at something, get off your butt and go work hard at something and earn your right to be at the table and be the anti-entitlement generation. And that's I'm getting preachy again, but what motivates me, what gets me up every morning is what challenge is ahead today that I get to conquer. I get to be a part of the story. I get to be in the narrative of making somebody else's life better.
That's really, Mark, I appreciate this. Has been an incredible hour. And that's literally, the name of the podcast. When you see a challenge, you could either run away or you could conquer that challenge. And it's very clearly, you either have that growth mindset that I've seen you post on LinkedIn. You said a safe place is where you can imprison someone. And, I could not agree more. You're either on the path of growth or the path of stability, in my opinion. And I think the worst thing you can do is really put people into two boxes, whether it's Republican, Democrat, black, white, whatever it may be. But I truly do believe there are two types of people. You're on the path of growth or you're on the path of stability. And there's not a right or wrong answer. Some people are very happy in the moment. As we allude to, the happiest people live in the present. So if you're on the path of stability, you're happy in the present, awesome. That's, I honestly envy that to a certain extent. But I think those are really powerful. And just the successful people, they see challenges as opportunities to grow rather than ways to, go back into your shell, if that makes sense. So I always like to kind of just wrap up the podcast for people. Mark, if you have to run off, feel free. But my final kind of takeaways, or just overall property stewards, you're the eyes, ears, and hands when someone can't be. I think that's really powerful. When we talk about getaway homes, very different from vacation or short-term property homes where people, they're just living life. They go from place to place. There's no I'm going to go there in 2 weeks. I'm going to be there in 3 months. They're not necessarily planning ahead. They're kind of just living life. And when these things happen, typically if you need a handyman, an appliance person, the AC is messed up, it takes a week just to figure that out. And by that point, these people are already on to their next getaway home and they need the next issue solved.
That's right.
So what you guys are doing and what I think most successful businesses today do is there's a lot of saturation. There's the 500th painting company, the 200th flooring company, but really differentiating yourself and finding that need or service that's actually needed and figuring out how you can solve that. And I think that's a lesson to anyone that wants to be a business owner, considering business ownership. Stop focusing internally on how you can make money, but looking at society and how you can solve these issues. Mark, I really like when you're 28, you changed careers and you alluded to, there's not really a right or wrong way, but if you feel like it's not living up to your passion, your mission, your why, it's typically time for a change. And I know Irina on my previous episode, if you're somewhere for 3 years and you're not taking that next level of growth, typically time to reevaluate and see if it are those next stages. And next, I want to talk about mentorship, just something that's very important to you. And I think this line that I read is very important. You got to learn to earn to return. And I love to see, people of your generation really giving back to my generation, helping us out. I think too many times in my generation, we're not curious about the older generations trying to learn. And we tried doing everything on our own rather than learning from people that have actually done it themselves. And then we can find ways to make it even a little bit better to a certain extent. So I think that's really powerful. And really just living in the present, as we alluded to, I think has been really powerful. Figuring out what your why statement is. There's no right, wrong way to live life. And the hardest thing in life is figuring out that why, but it really comes from just trying all these different things, figuring out what you like, what you don't like. And biggest recommendation, the earlier you start this, the better, you can figure out that why statement. But even if you are 30, 40, 50 years, corporate America, still trying to figure out that why, it's never too late. There's thousands of opportunities out there. It's really a matter of your mindset and how you see opportunities, because the more hands you shake, the more people you meet, the more opportunities you're going to get. So lastly, I just want to finalize on just being open, keeping that open mindset, and really just, I think those are really my big takeaways, Mark. I think this was really awesome in terms of finding your why statement, finding your passion. And, just like I said earlier on the podcast, you're one of those people that you surround yourself with and you just have that natural positive energy that just uplifts me. And, I'm in a condo, I go in the elevator, everyone's on their phone. No one really says anything. If I say, how are you doing? It's the biggest surprise to someone that there's human interaction and asking someone how they're doing, or I even smile and stuff. And that's a surprise to some people. So I think more and more people are just living on their own, in their own bubble. So I think it's really powerful to have these connections, these relationships, because I do believe humans, we are happier when we engage with each other, we interact with each other. So I love, Mark, everything that you've done between building a business, the family, all these extra hobbies you're doing, this well-balanced. I think you're doing a tremendous job being a role model for the next generation. So I appreciate you joining me on the podcast, Mark. I had an amazing time this hour, and I think the viewers are going to get a lot of insights and experiences. So I appreciate you sharing and your openness on the podcast.
It was a great honor. And if you were my son or grandson, I would be very proud of you, Josh. And I would tell you one thing: get after it, boy. Get after it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, if anyone knows, my biggest fans are my father, my mother, and my grandmother, who watches every single podcast episode. So I appreciate all the support from the family, friends, anyone that made it to the end of the episode. Like, share, comment, subscribe, help out the algorithm. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in.